This is 10 beginner tips for vintage story. Tip number 1. When napping a rock, you only need to break the blocks on the outline of what you're making. By only breaking the voxels that are necessary, you can save yourself a lot of time and a lot of clicking. Tip number 2. Sticks are a valuable resource and are used to make all sorts of useful tools and items. You have a higher chance of receiving sticks when you break the leaves on a tree before chopping it down. You are also guaranteed a stick when breaking branchy leaves, or you can pick them up off the ground by right-clicking on them with an open hand or with a stick in hand. Regular leaves have a very low chance of dropping sticks, so it's usually not worth breaking them. Tip number 3. You can harvest cattail roots for emergency food. They aren't very filling, but they can keep you alive in a pinch. You'll need to break the cattail's base with a knife. If you try to harvest them with your hands, it will just break the root. Once obtained, you can cook them on a fire pit for an easy meal. Tip number 4. Jumping into water does not work like it does in Minecraft. The higher you fall, the more water you'll need to break your fall. Fall damage is real and it hurts a lot. Keep this in mind when exploring, and generally, we recommend avoiding cliff diving. Tip number 5. On your first day, you'll want to do a lot of things, but one of the most important is getting a good idea of your surroundings. Don't be afraid to run around, explore a little. Keep an eye out for ore deposits, berry bushes, and mushrooms. M with default controls will bring up your map. If you right click on any spot on the map, you can create a customizable waypoint. This is super helpful and I recommend using it for everything from caves to mushrooms. Tip number 6. Terra Petra is the best soil you can use for growing crops. Keep an eye out for it as you explore because you'll want some when you start farming. You can simply break the block and carry it around with you. It's usually easy to spot as it's a much darker brown than normal soil. Tip number 7. You will be attacked by drifters when night falls. These little guys aren't too scary on their own, but they almost always show up in packs. Taking a one-on-one fight with any creature in Vintage Story can be deadly if you aren't prepared, much less 7. Make sure you have a shelter to keep yourself safe when these guys show up. If you don't want to die, a shelter is a non-negotiable day 1. Tip number 8. Speaking of Nightfall, make sure you have something to do during the night. Vintage Story's day and night cycle is long, 48 minutes to be exact. While you are sitting around waiting for your unwanted visitors to leave, you're going to want something to pass the time. This can be with napping more tools, or using clay to make yourself some very useful items. You can always make a bed from dry grass, however, we don't recommend sleeping on the first night. You likely won't survive as you lose satiety while sleeping, and chances are you won't have much food on your first night. Tip number 9. Speaking of clay, we recommend making a crock and bowl as your first items. They don't take long to make, and once you have them, food becomes much less of an issue. With a crock, you can start cooking multiple ingredients together and make meals. These meals typically last longer and are very filling. Some easy meals are 2 grain for porridge, 2 raw meat with optional vegetables or fruits for meat stew, or 2 vegetables for vegetable stew. The cooking system in Vintage Story is deep and allows for a lot of mixing and matching of ingredients, so don't be afraid to get creative. Tip number 10. Lumps of fat are a valuable crafting material and should only be eaten in emergencies. You can get some by killing pigs, sheep, foxes, wolves, and hyenas. It allows you to seal crocks for long storage, make oil lamps, which are an early game permanent lighting, torches will only last for 48 hours when placed, and making leather. It's valuable stuff, and there's better stuff to eat anyway. That's it, those are our 10 beginner tips. If you found them helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. If you have useful tips, leave them in the comments. And thanks for watching.